chair recognizes Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to our mayors that are here. And I really quickly want to touch on something because I know that many of you prepared for today's hearing by making sure that you got a little bit of information about immigrants and crime in your cities. Let me ask each of the mayors, just yes or no. Have any of you been made aware of any immigrant that has had 34 felony convictions that has still been able to roam around in your cities? Anyone?
No, ma'am.
34 felony convictions
No,
from the
Congresswoman.
immigrants. Anybody?
I'm not aware.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm just curious because we are so concerned about crime. And I know that my Republican colleagues would never want anybody with 34 felony convictions roaming around because that could be a danger to the community. But I will move on. The Republicans put more effort into producing their little propaganda trailer for this hearing than they have into reforming America's immigration system. And that's why we're here today. In fact, Republicans are beating up on the vast majority of you about what you're doing for your citizens. But the last time I checked, you're actually showing up. You may or may not be aware, but the NRCC just instructed Republicans to stop their town hall meetings because their constituents were showing up and telling them to do your jobs. If I had to sum up some of what you have said thus far today, I would sum it up as you have been trying to tell them as politely as you can to do their jobs. In fact, we know that they have not done their jobs, and so they're trying to force you to do it for them by turning your local law enforcement officers into ICE agents. They have this fake outrage about how immigrants are stealing resources and jobs from Americans when residents of Boston, Chicago, New York City, and Denver are subsidizing public services in their districts and their states because the Republicans refuse to ensure that their constituents earn a livable wage. Look, they don't have a plan to fix immigration in America because they don't want to. Mass deportation isn't a plan. Arresting kids in schools or worshipers in church isn't a plan. But there are important points to discuss as it relates to immigration in America. So, Mr. Beer, in January, you testified before the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. During that hearing, we played a little game called Rhetoric or Reality. Do you remember that?
I remember, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead for round two. Why don't we? Rhetoric or reality? Immigrants are a burden to the American taxpayers because they deplete our federal resources.
That would be rhetoric.
Correct. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that immigrants will lower U.S. deficits by a cumulative $1 trillion and increase the U.S. economy's size by nearly $9 trillion over 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In 2023, 47 million immigrants paid nearly $652 billion in taxes, $58.1 billion in taxes alone into Texas. Rhetoric or reality? During his first administration, Trump improved enforcement of U.S. immigration laws.
He did not.
In fact, President Trump closed almost all immigration courts for removal proceedings, cut prosecutions for unauthorized entry by 87%, cut ICE removals to the lowest level in the history of the agency, and released 9,000 people with violent crime convictions back into our communities. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
So, rhetoric or reality? President Trump's immigration policies make American communities safer.
No, they don't make communities safer.
In fact, nearly 100,000 unauthorized immigrants have obtained legal status through their cooperation with law enforcement. And local law enforcement agencies have more than 300,000 pending requests for immigrants seeking legal status based upon their cooperation with law enforcement, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Is that correct?
That's right. Immigrants work with law enforcement to stop and solve crimes.
Thank you. That was one of my rhetoric or reality questions. Sorry. The question was immigrants without legal status can help stop crime. That's correct.
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
All right. And Mr. Beer, isn't it true that Republicans are threatening to illegally strip cities of law enforcement grants intended for local policing and public safety if they don't go along with Trump's immigration agenda?
That's right. They want to redistribute the fiscal burden onto the Democratic cities and away from the Republican ones.
Which brings me to my next point. Mayor Adams, do you believe that President Trump is weaponizing the Department of Justice against local governments like New York City?
As I stated publicly, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. And as I indicated previously, this case is in front of Judge Ho, and I'm going to allow the judicial process to go forward.
Well, let me ask it a different way. There was a quote from Mr. Well, he had to get advice. So can I just get a
What's that?
He was getting advice. So can I get a little bit of time? I didn't interrupt while he was getting advice.
Because they were advising it. Go ahead.
Okay, this is the last one. There was a quote from Mr. Homan, I believe, where he said he will be in your office and up your butt if there was a problem with whatever agreement. We don't know what it was. My question to you, I know you've been asked about it a couple of times today, is was he lying when he said that you made an agreement that would cause him to be up your butt if you failed to uphold your end of it?
And gentlelady's time's expired, but if the mayor wants to answer that, he can.
Congresswoman, I answered that question, and it appears as though we're asking the same questions over and over and over again. My comments are not going to change. No quid pro quo, no agreement. I did nothing wrong.
Chair recognizes Mr. Langworthy from New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, mayors, for being here. You all represent cities that should be beacons of opportunities for young professionals, entrepreneurs, and hardworking Americans that want to make it in this world. Not the laughing stocks that they become in many ways. New York was once hailed as the capital of the world. Boston was admired for its founding role in America. Chicago was the gateway to the West and the icon of the Great Lakes. And Denver was admired for its natural beauty. Now all these cities are seen as a place where illegal immigrants, violent criminals, and gang members thrive, breaking our laws and spreading fear throughout our communities. Let's be clear. Sanctuary policies have not just failed. They've made our cities less safe and less welcoming to those who truly want to contribute to our communities. Here's a perfect example. Laken Riley's murderer was arrested in New York City on charges of detaining a minor. He was released due to New York State's sanctuary status. He was then allowed to go on to Georgia, where he murdered Laken in cold blood. Last night in my district, 400 miles from New York City, 2 members of Trendaragua gang were arrested for an ATM jackpotting scheme that stole more than $100,000. The suspects were also wanted for similar crimes throughout the state of New York, and in your state's Mayor Johnson and Mayor Wu for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, God only knows what else these dangerous gang members are responsible for. Buffalo ICE recently arrested an illegal from Peru who had murdered 23 people and had the victims' faces tattooed on his body. He was allowed to evade law enforcement for a long time due to New York State's green light law that protected him and shielded DMV data from federal law enforcement officials. There is no such thing as a victimless crime. Every crime has a victim, and these victims, they don't have a sanctuary. They have to live with the pain and the trauma of something being taken from them, their safety, their security, their property. And to add insult to injury, the witnesses before us have protected the perpetrators. Mayor Wu, the other day, you stunningly expressed sympathy for the man responsible for the knife attack, not the brave officer who stopped him. Where is the sympathy for the men and women in law enforcement trying to keep us safe?